Here we are again to once more talk about the US, UK, never probably going to happen, at least for significant times, at least, a trade deal. Yes, Liz Truss, the original, of course, head minister of the Department for International Trade, very much, well, didn't really do a lot. She very much took credit for other people's work. All the rollover deals that we signed, again, were pretty much to assure continuity, as all these other countries said. We want, let's sign a rollover deal. Let's have at least a bit of continuity while we sign these new trade deals. And the only two that have been currently officially started, of course, have been the Australian and, of course, the New Zealand trade deal. Of course, we still do not know what are going to be the full details. We only have heard bits and snippets and rumors about what could potentially be in these trade deals, but needless to say, doesn't look very good. But Liz Truss is not going to be there for the fallout. It is going to be this person, Trevelyan, who is our new leader of the Department for International Trade. Of course, Liz Truss got shuffled off to the Foreign Office and has been heavily involved recently doing Margaret Thatcher role play and, of course, soliciting, shall we say, donors for her eventual coup against Boris Johnson, potentially. Who knows what this week may indeed bring. But this is worth bringing up because, of course, one of the big things that Brexiteers always said, and one of the big goals of Brexit, was to get this much vaunted US-UK trade deal, which would apparently just replace our EU membership completely. And of course, very, very much part of the fantasies and the fairy tales that the Brexiteers would like to tell people. But this is yet another new chapter in this, so let's dive in and find out what's exactly going on over this. So, before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, let's dive into this, shall we? So, this comes from Politico, with the title, Global Britain Struggles to Get the US Attention Over Steel Fight. The UK is growing tired of playing nice in its long-running trade dispute with the US over steel. But playing nasty could backfire. The International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan travelled to Washington last week to urge her counterparts to lift the punishing national security tariffs on steel, aluminium, put in place by the former President Donald Trump, imposed back in 2018. So far, this gambit appears not to have paid off. Trevelyan has faced growing pressure at home after convincing those eager to retaliate to give her a chance to try and take a softer line. She has noted, though, before leaving Washington, that the UK is prepared to retaliate further. We have been clear all along that resolving this dispute is the right thing to do, she said. It will benefit the workers and businesses on both sides of the Atlantic and would remove the need for the UK to levy retaliatory tariffs on US goods. And there are already some UK tariffs on items like bourbon whiskey and Harley-Davidson motorbikes. These could be increased, but the UK could trigger other areas too, with some in the Trade Department floating US wine as a possible option. The question, of course, is whether threatening Washington will actually work. For its part, the EU threatened to double its retaliatory tariffs over the steel issue. And after some months, Washington relented. But the EU is a massive trading bloc, whereas after Brexit, the UK is just a single nation all alone. The idea of the UK threatening the US with a heightened trade conflict is utterly preposterous, said David Hegg, the co-founder of the UK Trade Forum, with business figures also scoffing at the idea that the US would even take much notice of sectoral tariffs. However, the DIT insiders argue that the US trade with Britain is significant enough for tariffs on the right sector to try and promote business pressure that could get the ball rolling in Washington. Even if that were the case, the escalating row could further sour relations between the two sides, which the UK government is very reluctant to do, and it still hopes for an eventual wider trade deal. In Washington, there's a lot of skepticism about this. Tan Albach, a DC trade lawyer, said that the post-Brexit commitment to a wider trade deal and the desire for the Biden administration to rebuild ties with the EU following the Trump era meant that he did not anticipate that the UK would move ahead with that threat to increasing the territory tariffs on the US. Washington also seems very disinterested in a free trade deal that Britain wanted to tread with caution. After the meeting with the Trevelyan, Trade Secretary Kathleen Tai remained non-committal about whether talks on the agreement might resume. However, some expect Tai to come to Britain next month, where there are rumours that Dan Malani, who may now lead a dominant FTA negotiations on the US side, could make an appearance in London in the spring. Despite hoping, of course, to leave Washington with a timetable on the steel negotiations to begin, Trevelyan didn't even get a response to her invitation for the Commons Secretary Gala, Gina Romano, to visit London next month to discuss this issue further. She was said by the UK officials to be confident, however, the visit will go ahead. The row will become even more fraught next month, of course, when some tariffs are eased on the EU, meaning that the bloc will have a massive competitive advantage over Britain. It was insulting enough that the US negotiated these issues with Brussels without going to the UK for talks, but seeing the confident befitted from favourable treatment of the so-called special partnership, a partner of Washington, gets left in the cold is very, very hard to swallow. The pressure, of course, from the political opposition is to be expected. The Shadow International Trade Secretary, Nick Thomas Slamons, said that it was extremely disappointing that Trevelyan failed to return from Washington with a deal. Time is running out, he argued, adding the Conservative administration must stop letting down our steel communities. And there is trouble on her own side as well. A number of Conservative MPs in the steel manufacturing seats are becoming very agitated about the lack of progress and are starting to increase pressure on the government. A consultation on the possible next moves will return back in the summer, but the Trade Department has been sitting on it, hoping Washington will play ball. The US might eventually pay attention to Britain if it moved on over the threats to unilaterally suspend the post-Brexit rules on Northern Ireland over its disagreement with Brussels, something US President Joe Biden has warned against for fear that it would put in place the peace in the region. The US is also averse to such thing as a move to such as that ahead of the Trade Secretary's trip. A memo was leaked warning that Washington will not discuss the steel issue until Britain backs down on its threat to suspend the Northern Ireland Agreement. Some argue that the continued steel tariffs, in fact, will put more pressure on the fraught trading picture involving Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Trevelyan is said to have put that argument to a US counterparts, which could be interpreted as a threat. Lift these tariffs, or the UK will be more likely to suspend Brexit trade rules. Ministers have also argued that these two are not linked, but insist, even in private, that the UK would not use the protocol row as leveraged against Washington. Hagee said the suggestion made very little sense because it would amount to threatening the EU and collectively is the 2/3 of our trade, he added. The government needs a pretty urgent dose of reality. Again, this is how we're being treated now on the international stage. Again, Brexiteers, we're saying that we would be this massive, confident trading nation, that we could go out into the world and do all these fantastic deals, except no. As was even put in that article there, the EU is a massive trading bloc. We are now just one nation alone. This is how it is going to go from now on. The threats about, of course, about suspending the Northern Ireland Protocol, you'll notice very, very recently have started to cool down. And also you'll notice that Lord Frost, has dropped very recently his red lines of trying to get rid of the European Court of Justice from his very own trade deal that he helped negotiate. So things are eventually cooling down, and I think the realization is eventually setting in that they have no idea what to do over Northern Ireland, and they never really ever did. There was no plan in Brexit about Northern Ireland. The Brexiteers just thought that they would somehow hold all the cards and they could just move and do whatever they wanted, and no one would care. But no, the EU does care, because Ireland is, again, it's one of its member states, and the EU and the rest of the EU countries have said that we will move to protect Ireland as a member state. And of course, you've got Washington as well in the US, who have basically said, hey, we're going to protect the peace in Northern Ireland. And by the way, if you do stuff that will affect our trade, well, we ain't going to be happy either. Needless to say, Britain has been completely backed into a corner with no options left but to back down. Again, so much for the incredibly powerful trade nation that the Brexiteers said global Britain would become once we freed ourselves from the shackles of the evil EU. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you all next.